But I want to thank you because you're doing one of the most important things that you can do for your child. You're educating yourself. The law, is, I'm sure you know, is very complicated. And the more you educate yourself, the better off your child will be. And one of the things that you have at your benefit, which I didn't have when I graduated from law school, was you have the internet. And nowadays, if you go on the internet and if you use, we have our livespecial.com. If you use those kind of internet connections, you're going to find so much information that it will really help to educate you. With that little speech, I think I'm going to get going. What I've done is I've divided this into 5 parts. First, we're going to talk a little bit generally about IDEA, a very little bit. Then we're going to talk about the law. Then we're going to talk about how to get started. Then we're going to talk about the IEP meeting. And finally, we're going to talk about goals and objectives. I will give you just an introduction to goals and objectives. Next week, Carrie Agans, who was my law partner when I was in practice, will be coming, and she will give you in much more detail the importance of how to develop goals and objectives. So it is important that you come for more than just one session. Today, transition is probably one of the most neglected areas of all areas in the IEP. Traditionally, transition has never been thought of to be a part of FAPE. Do we all know what FAPE is? Okay. FAPE is a free, appropriate public education. The big rub comes in what is appropriate, because what you may think is appropriate is not what the school would think is appropriate. They mandated, IDEA mandates, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, mandates that each child who is eligible receive an IEP in the least restrictive environment. It's taken many, many, many years to get where we are today. I always like to say that when I started out, they had IEP meetings for 15 minutes each. That was all the time you were allowed. Parents were lined up in the hallway waiting for their 15 minutes, because if they came 2 minutes late, then they were docked those 2 minutes. And that's how IEP meetings were held, one after another, 15 minutes, and there was no such thing as a second IEP meeting. So although I know a lot of you struggle a great deal, the truth is you've really come a long way from where you were. But as I said, transition has not followed through in progressing in the way that it should. Often transition was just looked at as something that's added to the IEP at the end. Nobody knew exactly what it was for. They would put down things like, Jimmy will write a resume, and then they would provide a service, 1 time a semester, okay? Or they would say, Jimmy would need transportation. We will get him an RTA list of bus times. That's not appropriate. And therefore, one of the most important things you can take away from here is that transition, and the transition portion, is a part of a free, appropriate public education. If they do not provide the right transition, they have failed to provide FAPE. And that is a critical thing, and a lot of schools do not understand that transition portion requires FAPE as well as the rest of the IEP. So I think you should be very aware next time you go to a meeting that transition includes FAPE, free appropriate public education. It is critical, as I said before, to have knowledge and to educate yourself.